Similar to last week, I'll probably go through maybe just 5 minutes on a presentation, and then we'll focus more on doing a workshop this week with each of you guys on the topic of your startup idea and your product, and how to come up with a product that is 10 times better than your competitors. We'll talk generally about the concept quickly, and then we can do a workshop where I'll work with each of you guys on your business in particular. The general concept is that you need these three things. You need to be solving a big problem, like a painful problem in the world, because as I mentioned last week, and as Sam Altman says, hard startups are actually easier to do than easy startups because they can grow much bigger. When it's a really painful problem, it can grow much bigger. And so even if you get 1% of the way there, you still have a really meaningful business. And then also more people want to help you or join you, because if you're like, hey, I want to colonize Mars, that's very inspiring. Whereas if you're like, I want to start a restaurant, nobody really cares. And also investors want to join you, because investors generally, they look for the $1 billion outcomes. So yeah, that's why we want to pick a big problem. Also, I think just this is just self-evident, but something that you are personally passionate about, because a lot of the times the biggest problems in the world are not obvious, because otherwise people would have done it before, right? A lot of the times it starts out as a passion project, and you really got to go, that gets you through spending a lot of time on it, because at the start you can't really see. For example, when Microsoft started, it was a hobbyist thing where they were writing BASIC for the Altair, and computers were just a geeky kind of hobbyist thing. Same with Apple Computer, right? Like they just did this for a nerdy club at Stanford. Like they wouldn't have thought that, hey, this would go on to be like a computer for every person in the world. Like Bill Gates actually went back to Harvard after starting Microsoft because he didn't see it. But yeah, like what it got him through initially was just being passionate about what he's doing. So that's all pretty obvious. And then the hardest part is, okay, you picked a big problem. Now it's like, how do you actually get a product or a solution that is 10 times better? So you really need to be an expert in the industry. And the only way to do that is to spend like at least a year, like multiple years, really getting to the forefront of like a particular industry, whether that's like studying hundreds of companies in that industry, reading all the textbooks or the journal articles and scientific research articles. You go to Google Scholar, search for the scientific research articles. A lot of the times you could just look at the public institutions addressing these problems because they have public annual reports. For example, there's a lot of public waste management companies, the government departments that are responsible for waste disposal that have annual reports. For education, every single university has to write the quarterly report, annual report. They publish all their strategic initiatives, study all of that. And then, yeah, there's hundreds of startups on YC that are all listed in the directory about, okay, here's the 500 latest cool things that are happening in edtech. And let's look at how they are tackling that problem. Anyway, that's the high level concept, and we can get started with workshopping for each of you guys. So who wants to go first? Who wants to welcome me first on doing a little workshop on how these principles might apply to your business in particular? Cool. Okay. So Hannah was first, and Mark will do you afterwards. So let's go down to, where are we? All right. So Hannah, so your business is it pronounced like Ziva?
Steve, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I looked at your application and also just generally on your website. If we bring it back to this framework, about the problem first, would you say that this, like, how passionate do you feel about this problem? And also, how big of a problem do you feel like this is? As well as, is there a bigger problem behind the problem? Because I know, like, right now you're doing like software for like academic institutions, but would the bigger problem just to be to fix education or to make like better like academic institutions?
Definitely. Maybe not making a better academic institution, but it's the fact that it's all very systematic when it's supposed to be more of a learning experience. And the first thing that we noticed that even got us here was the fact that this was the only problem we could really experience through these years. We were on the receiving side of this till now, right? Like we are still students. And this is something we've seen a lot of people do. Like a lot of teachers, they spend a lot more time doing these administrative works than even caring about what they were teaching, at least in our schools. But as you said, yeah, I think the bigger problem would be the system itself and how they manage all the processes that are associated with it. So, yes, going forward, we would like to tackle some of those too.
Yep. I definitely relate to that because that is the exact reason why I'm doing this sort of cohort with you guys is because I really hated my university experience. I felt like I learned nothing. I felt like it was a giant waste of my time. And then I dropped out maybe 3 years in. So what is most painful to you about your learning experience or about the problem you're working on?
With regards to the problem I was working on, it was the fact that I used to be a really good student. In school, I used to score really well, which meant that teachers were very friendly. And I would often get delegated work like this: do this spreadsheet, do that, do this thing, do that thing, simply because I had a close relationship with them. And that's how I discovered my family also had a lot of teachers. That's how I discovered that this is what takes up most of their time in comparison trying to figure out new ways to teach them something or trying to figure out the learning part of teaching. The biggest problem right now, you put it in your own words, university. This is being a very taxing thing because we have platforms, we have everything we have to take care of, but the system doesn't feel like it's catered towards anything new. Yeah, you're submitting assignments. Yes, you're doing this. Yes, you're doing that. So to tackle that part, we decided to approach the administrative side first.
So I think that there's like a ton of problems here, right? At least from my personal experience, the content that was taught at universities is not relevant. The teachers that were teaching it, most teachers are not really qualified to teach because if the goal of university is to prepare you for work and either to start a business or to work in a profession, most university lecturers are academics. Like they don't have that experience in industry. So hence the things that you are taught are very theoretical, which may work if you're going to do a hard science where you're at a leading institution that is world class at physics research or biology research. If you're going to learn about entrepreneurship, then you're probably not qualified. So yeah, a couple things on the problem, and then we could talk about how do we get a 10 times better solution. Here's the thing you could check out. This is by a friend of mine called Raphael, where he talks about how academic funding is broken. And this is part of the
Mhm.
reason because most university lecturers, they're incentivized to publish papers and to do research. To
Right.
teach students is just a chore that they have to do so they can get funding and do research. And then this goes through all the like crap they have to go through to apply for government grants and all the things that are wrong there and how there's these two institutions, Elsevier and Nature, Macmillan Nature, that control academic publishing. And you have to get published to get funded by the government to get research grants. And these institutions, they're actually for-profit journals, and it costs tens of thousands of dollars to submit, and they control science. So a lot of professors are just publishing for the sake of publishing for career advancement as opposed to actually researching meaningful scientific topics. So shift to talking about, how have you thought about the solution to this, and what have you?
Basically, we've addressed that the system isn't really the most ideal for learning itself. Instead of trying to change the system, we thought that we could provide advantages to the students so that they can control the system instead. If we can't it is very hard to go on something that changes the entire curriculum. But we, right now at least, we have a lot of tools at our disposal that would make it easier for us to find our way through that curriculum. You don't have to memorize everything. You don't have to do something a certain way. Even if the concept's useless, we can make sure that it's less time consuming for students so that they can focus on what actually matters.
Yep, yep, for sure. What did I do? It's on the Athena curriculum. I won't pull it up now. I found like ASU GSV, which is like ed tech conference, and there's like several hundred pitches on different ed tech companies and what they do. So that's where I started. I just watched like 500 pitches of different ed tech companies, and there's everything in there. Then also on this sort of student organization, I found founders groups, like what we're trying to create here. But there are founders groups for like later stage founders that have like EO, YPO. They have like requirements where you're like, if you're making more than 3 million revenue, you can join this group, and it's with other founders. And then you like learn together and you meet up every month, just like what we're doing right now. The other interesting things I saw was this thing called like Minerva University, minerva.edu, where it has this concept of you go to 8 different countries in 4 years. So 6 months in every country. And in every single country, you do an internship. So you're doing 8 internships in 8 different countries, and your coursework is online. This kind of solves hey, the content is not that relevant because like more than half your courses, you're actually just working at 8 different companies and getting, I guess there's a sequence of internships. So I guess that's like a way to like address it as well. And then for me, like startup accelerators, like I went through two of them and that was like a different learning experience where you're actually like building instead of just purely learning from textbooks. One thought I had for like curriculum was it could perhaps be like Wikipedia. Instead of a static textbook, you could have a curriculum where different people continue to update it for the best resources that are the most relevant at the current time, which is probably what we experiment with here. But I guess what I'm saying is like with this whole thing, like basically how I approach it, which I don't, there's lots of ways to approach this, but I pretty much just spent maybe 4 years thinking about this, like studying a lot of different angles of attack. And as I mentioned, you can read the annual reports for the universities to see, okay, how are they thinking about this? What are their expenses? Private schools as well. They have this. You could read like government budget papers about like how's the government thinking about this, as well as every single thing that's adjacent to education. Personal development companies, like the online learning stuff, like Coursera, Udacity, like a lot of these ones are publicly listed as well. Like if you solve education, then can basically inspire a whole generation of like humans to make like a multiplier effect on progress. You can just
Right.
help like millions of people become more productive and create new things. And it's, yeah, the upside is like unlimited. It's like basically the highest leverage thing you can do. Anyway, that's my like high level thought. Any questions or things you want to dive into?
The internship thing you mentioned, right? It seems so fun. It seems so nice. How affordable of an experience is it?
I think it's like $20,000 to do. But then the gripe that I have in Minerva is the curriculum is still taught by academics. So you are getting like Ivy League professors and stuff, but it's still like the outdated, irrelevant curriculum. It's like right now, if you're studying computer science, right, it's great. You do need to learn the fundamentals of how like computer science work. But if you want to build a web app, you're not going to learn it through like computer science degree. You go teach yourself how to build a web app and then you look at open source stuff and you build your own.
Yeah, it's still cool to think about that at least someone out there is doing something outside of just regular in-person classes.
Yes. But no, I would definitely like to see this happen. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
whatever you find, please let me know. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'll keep posting on Discord if I see any other interesting things. It's the same thing with what Sam Altman said, like these three things are the most important, like his most important topics. And same with Paul Graham. It was just like, university is going to get replaced like on the way out. In the US, it's like $200,000 to go to college. And Y Combinator startup accelerators are part of that replacement. Cool. Should we move on to Mark? Mark, yours was about waste management, right? So I see like on your application form, you've already mentioned that you've done a lot of user research, which is awesome. I think that is definitely something we want to do to fully understand the problem. And YC talks about that as well, talking to hundreds of users, really understanding the problem. It usually works best if it's like a problem that you personally experience or you really understand the user and you talk to hundreds of them. What drew you to waste management and what makes you passionate about this?
I would say what really put me towards waste management was from the community. I growing up in a Central Africa where everywhere we see our adults is surrounded with a lot of problems.
Sorry, Mark, do you mind holding your microphone just a little bit closer? It's a bit easier to hear you.
Okay, is it better now?
Oh, yeah, that's a lot better.
Okay. What I was saying is what really drew me to waste management was from the community. I starting from when I was in high school, so the leader of the science club in high school. I usually organize activities like cleanup campaigns, plastic picking events, and recycling activities. One of the most memorable activities I was this event where we went out to some parks, we gathered out plastics and we recycled those plastics to chairs. For my background in robotics and software engineering, right from when I was 13 years old, I started already coding. After high school, I started thinking of ways, how can I impact my community? That's where I just saw myself. I went to waste management, attended MIT Solve 2021. Doing a brainstorming session. I actually developed an SOP. That is where my startup idea was.
Listen, and would yeah, I guess I'd love to understand a bit more about the problem in Africa in terms of in terms of waste management. Is it like waste is there's no like waste collection services or like waste is just strewn everywhere or what's the problem as users have described or as like you have experienced and what are the most painful aspects of that problem?
Okay. Before COVID-19, the waste mismanagement problems that were not really that serious. After COVID-19, waste collection became a really big during the period of the lockdowns, mainly during the period of the lockdown. So after that, people like adapted to the measure. So during the lockdowns, people like found a way to dispose of waste. And how were they doing it? They decided to hire others, hire people, and people come to their homes, take their waste, and help them dispose of it at the main dustbins. And also waste collectors, they face the problem of actually tracking these dustbins where they are. I actually visited some of these companies. I spoke with some of the workers, spoke with some of these companies in my country. Actually, primary and both secondary research, that is where I was really driven to this. So we started actually in 2022 by just building actually SaaS, actually a dashboard where we could sell to these waste collectors to help them track food dustbins, Central Africa.
Yep. Yep. That makes sense. And yeah, tell us more about like the solution that you had in mind and how you feel like it's different or 10 times better than what's currently available.
Okay. So I don't know about some developed countries, but what is really in my environment, I would say it's traditional. The waste collector, they just move around. Where they see food dustbin, they collect. The day they don't see, they don't collect. So just looking at that, they tend to spend a lot of resources going from human workforce, the costs, even the carbon footprint. If we want to be accountable to all of these factors, it's really enormous. What my solution actually does, it helps them track the food dustbins around. And not only that, but with the AI models that my team and I we are currently working on, we can help them actually perform things like waste prediction, like when will this dustbin get full, and help them generate smart collection plans from using several Google Maps.
Yep. Yep. That makes sense. And what would you say would be like the sort of bigger problem behind waste management? Perhaps waste management, what would that form like a bigger part of, whether it be like sanitation or better living standards for people, or I don't know, sustainability or
Really, the big problem in waste management in Africa, I don't know, in Africa mainly is the collection. How is that affects the community? How you know that the worst disease in Africa is malaria. Malaria is the biggest problem in Africa. Yearly, there is a large amount of in Africa because of the main factor causing malaria is the waste sector. Really, when you move around streets, for example, in my country, Cameroon, even in the capital, so recently I helped news that the problem has really reduced. But before I left my country, when you move around the streets, you will see bins everywhere. Dustbins are stuck everywhere, and you see the waste, even the dustbins get full until it start causing traffic on the road. Just and their houses. So where the waste collectors, they go and put those dustbins beside places where people live. Those waste the dustbin get full and overflow in those areas. And in some areas it spends weeks, some others they make months without their dustbins being collected. So those dustbins they are really breathing down from mosquitoes, and really it's really a big problem. So that is why I tend to move towards them.
that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, I feel like it's almost like a bigger like problem. It forms like a part of the bigger problem of just government services. And because obviously like waste collection in a lot of countries is a public service, or the government might like hire like private contractors. But I guess just in general, like competent government services, I think like public sector is really good to look at, because the government, if you guys like, I was surprised to learn this, but the government makes up about 30% of the economy in most countries, sometimes more, sometimes 50%. And they're usually targeting the biggest problems like healthcare, waste management, utilities, transport, law and order, education. But the best part is, and what I've been interested in lately, is you can see like the reports and the strategy and the financials of every government around the world. So what I've been doing for education is, because talking to you guys at Athena and run this better for you guys, is yeah, just studying literally like how governments run every like university around the world. But you could do the same thing for like waste management. And I think it could be really interesting to look at like countries that do this really well. For example, like Singapore is like freaking spotless. It's so clean that it makes me uncomfortable. And you could also look at other examples of countries in Africa that have gone from poor waste management policies and like pollution and lots of waste everywhere to a competent and like effective policy. And what did they do? And what did they try? What didn't work? I think a lot of the research from like NGOs and from government bodies is also published on Google Scholar. So I describe this in the curriculum, but I'll just show you guys right now. So if I go to Google Scholar, and then there's this site called Sci-Hub, which allows you to basically view any academic article for free. So if I just waste management, Africa.
Hello, this
Yeah.
just a introduction. So I get your point about what you say. It's really focused on development. But look, the reality in these African countries is the government has been there for long and they are not doing anything. And the population, they tend to look for other measures. So what is really going on really in some African countries currently is private waste collection. So private waste collectors are really what the population is being focused on. And uh, that is one of the things that I'm trying to build. My company is actually trying to build to address. So apart from building a SaaS for waste collectors, we are currently working on a mobile application that connects private waste collectors, homes, businesses that are in need of payment directly from the platform. It's just like Uber for delivering waste.
Yep. That makes sense. Yeah, I'm not saying, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that like government is the solution. I was thinking that one potential way to learn about this would be to look at like examples of effective waste management in other countries, whether it's run by government or whether it's run by private firms. For example, there is a firm called Waste Management. I actually have stock in this firm. Okay, so this is a NASDAQ listed firm called Waste Management. And then it has annual reports, it has billions in revenue, and they have a lot of strategy documents describing how they implement waste management. I think this company is either in America or like Canada. Like, granted, there's going to be a lot of like differences between like countries, but I think it may be beneficial to look at, okay, what technology, what SaaS products or what like systems and processes do some of the best companies in the world use for waste management, that where this company is worth, I don't know, worth like they have 5 billion in revenue. So they're probably worth 50 billion, 100 billion or something. And I think, yeah, like the academic articles are also like interesting. So on Google Scholar, I think a lot of the NGOs, and this is probably like a topic where a lot of like researchers publish like research on, okay, what are the most effective methods of doing this. So yeah, I think that's the great thing about like developing country stuff is I think there's a lot of think tank research on this where they've looked at, okay, like what methods could potentially be effective. So I think that, yeah, I have no experience in waste management. So you would know much more than me, but I did spend like quite a long time reading about microfinance and all the different models there and which ones worked and which organizations had results, which didn't. So I think it might be a similar like angle for, okay, like research on waste management there. And yeah, so with SciHub, which is this website, you could just put in, so you find like these articles and then usually it'll be like, oh, this article is blocked, blah, blah, blah. If it is, oh, this one isn't blocked, but some of them are, but you just put it in here and it'll unblock it. Yeah. So that's my high level thoughts there. Was there like a specific challenge, or did you have the biggest challenge currently that I potentially like brainstorm with you?
Hey, Mark, क्या है? If not, maybe muted.
Mark, did you have a specific sort of biggest challenge that maybe I could brainstorm with you, or all good?
I think Mark's audio got disconnected. He can't hear us anymore.
All right, cool. Yeah, all right. I guess we'll move on. Who wants to go next? All right, Trini. Cool. So, Trini, so far you've been working on like influencer stuff and building your podcast and personal brand. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. So, what's next for you, and how can I help? What's your biggest challenges currently?
Hi, everyone. The thing that I believe that I've been drawn to over the past few, let's say, weeks of ideation for a problem statement that I want to target is actually in the space of assistive technologies or accessibility technologies, right? So there is this whole concept of WCAG guidelines and stuff that like websites have to comply with. But so that's the area that I was looking at initially. And I saw the competitors, I studied the different competitors that I had, and I started seeing, okay, so I did see that the market is pretty crowded in US UK, in those areas, US, UK, and Canada, so North America and UK. But I did notice that in the Asian market, there was nothing else for it. But at the same time, when I went and dug deeper, I realized that there was no clear calling to the WCAG for it to be followed by different websites, which is why probably nothing has even been built in this space in the Indian market. So I was initially thinking that I could do the same thing for Indian or Asian markets, but there was no enforced compliance. And the reason I even was drawn to this space was because I worked in a project in this domain of accessibility or assistive technology. So I was a part of this sort of hackathon, and I had made a hardware product. I think I mentioned it in my first meet as well. So it was a smart cane. So essentially it was blind people use canes. What this was a spin-off on it where it did obstacle detection. It did there were a bunch of other features. So there was SOS and there was like GPS and there was a bunch of features I will delve into later. But yeah, I worked on that. And slowly after I realized that this accessibility tech thing would not really work that well in India, I was planning on doing an AI based project, but clearly that did not have an enforcement by the government for all websites to comply. And I went ahead and spoke to people in this space as well. And they told me, no, people don't actually actively look out for, automated testing in India because it's not enforced. So that is when I realized that, okay, you know what, I could actually build on my product that I've already built. Like I've built a basic prototype and I could build on it to make it more useful for the visually impaired people. And that's when I started thinking about going into this. And I'm yet to speak to people about exactly what would help them. And also tonight at around 7 p.m. IST, I've scheduled 8 p.m. IST. I have to reach the 8. But I've scheduled a meet with people with a blind orphanage to discuss this and try to understand exactly what their pain points were. I did research the market and stuff too, but to just give a brief what I did in the past week, I just wanted to give that. But yeah, that's what I'm working on.
Yeah. Are you set on that product and that like concept, or are you still like in exploration phase?
So I am in the exploration phase because I do know that I want to do maybe something in the IoT come AI intersection space because I have experience in that. And I also am very passionate about that space as well. So AI and IoT, I do see that as being my main focus, but that's the kind of the reason I'm going there today, to talk to people and get to know if there's actually a need for this type of product, which is then I'll actually start working on it. But yeah, I'm also looking into non-invasive tech maybe at some point in the future once I have a clear idea. So non-invasive tech for like different aspects. So IoT and AI is like my main area of focus right now, but I'm still delving into.
I think it's generally just a fun exercise to ask what is the biggest possible problem you could solve, and to just think bigger. Because what I learned from my co-CEO, this guy Santosh Sharan, who I worked with for 2 years. So Santosh was the second in charge at ZoomInfo, which he helped grow to like a $10 billion company, that like the biggest in the contact data space. And then he also was the CRO president at Apollo, which is one of our other competitors, and they're like worth $1.6 billion. Anyway, he said something really interesting to me, which was, he said that, hey, like our team at Contact Out is actually more talented than the team at Apollo. And I was like, how is that possible? These guys are like unicorn like founders. We're doing like 10 million revenues, fraction of the size, like 1/15 of the size. And he said that, look, it really doesn't take much to get massive, because when you do hit on something that works, it grows exponentially. If you're growing at 10% a week, in 1 year, you're going to be 140 times bigger than you were before. And like the difference between growing at like 10% per week and growing at 1% per week is just a couple of optimizations. So if you get a few things, you can grow exponentially. And what Santosh meant for us was, he said that, hey, there's actually like tons of things wrong at this Apollo company, but they just got a couple things being like unlimited plans and like very cheap pricing. And then it just exploded and this word of mouth took over. So really there's not much difference between like Bill Gates and a regular person. I actually have like on my blog, lifeclub.org, there's this picture with a cloth and 2 little stick figures cut out like Bill Gates and you. So like we're all cut from the same cloth. So the thought there is, so for example, with the 2 startups that we talked about currently, so we talk about, okay, like tools for teachers, but what are we really solving? We're really solving like education. We could talk about like waste management, but what's the big problem behind that? It's like living in like a clean and a nice living environment. And there's like companies that are solving like that problem at an even larger scale. There's like startups that are trying to create new cities. So if you look at Singapore as an example, or like Hong Kong, really it's like a startup city. It's a city state where 50 years ago, there was no like country here. And then they just invented their own like policies. They looked at what everybody else in the world was doing, and they're like, let's take the best of some things from America, some things from India, some things from China, and let's implement a whole new city state so that people have really nice like living conditions. And what would be a better form of like democracy, or a more effective form of government for like all services that lead to having a nice like living habitat? And then, yeah, as Sam Altman said, the more that we work on these like actual like world changing problems that push forward like human progress, then you just study a lot of stuff in this area and people want to help you. And it's actually easier to do that than to do something smaller. So going back to the things that you mentioned, so you mentioned a lot of like different areas that you have interest in, and a lot of like different technologies like IoT, etc. But maybe if we go through these questions, how would you answer these questions?
What am I passionate about? I would not say I'm actively passionate about. I'm very much passionate about building like something that would create change. And I do know that what this plan that I've given is something that is affecting positively quite a big part of the workforce, which is often ignored due to effects of, let's say, things like ableism and just people not valuing this section of society. And that way, I am a very big, I'm quite a rebel sort of thing in the sense that I do want to fix problems for people who I might not relate to that much as well, but I know that they are facing a problem and that's not necessarily something that they can solve. So I'm passionate about it. There's no denying that. What's the biggest problem in my life? So there are quite a few. I have tried to narrow it down and try to understand different things. But at the end of the day, I think, especially in India, I feel like a lot of these common consumer problems are being targeted or have been targeted on the recent past, and they've grown to the massive scale where I don't know. It does feel like it's very hard to tap into that world of things. The reason I chose this as my idea, I did take it up as almost like a 90% yes, because when it comes to the visual impairment or just generally disabled section of society in India, I would say, other than government initiated things or government initiated products or initiations, there's nothing that company is actively doing to solve that problem. And this is an increasing problem because the percentage of disabled people is also increasing. I'm not necessarily sure about the market share. The CAGR is like 4.78%. So I've checked that, I've done all that research, but I do feel like this is something that if I work on, especially in India, I will get, because I've also checked a lot of like research papers and stuff like surveys, and it mentioned that getting into this space, IoT, at this moment is like the best thing to do. So I'm not really sure if the market size is that to be into at the moment, but it is
Yeah.
a yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that and yeah, so I did follow a similar like thought process like in starting Contact Out, because I was like I was part of a startup accelerator, and then my first idea like just didn't work out. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna come up with a startup idea in the next like 2 months to do this startup accelerator. And I was like, okay, let's just get into providing contact data, because there's a company that sold for 100 million, and that obviously people would need to contact other people to sell things, to recruit people, etc. 8 years later, I regret that decision in some ways. Do and I don't. Like the business is doing well. Clearly, I'm like fortunate enough to like making enough money for like myself and my family. Lifestyle's like pretty good. But like part of me is I could have also spent the last 8 years working on something that would make money, but would also like actually push forward like technology and human progress, because it's not actually like harder. In fact, it's easier. So like doing like Contact Out, like venture capitalists didn't want to fund me because they're like, oh, there's like 200 other companies selling contact data. And it's not really like good for the world. It's, hey, you're selling emails or whatever. So I think the reason I say this was, and obviously my situation is completely different from yours. I think what you're doing has a lot more like social good, or what you're thinking of doing. But I guess I just mean that the like consideration for like market size, for trends, for what's popular, is probably given like too much weight, because like when Microsoft started, it was like a hobbyist thing. It was just like, hey, I want to write some like software for this like little like device that not many people that like basically nobody in the world uses. Same with Apple. Wasn't the access? Oh yeah, like home hobbyist computers for like tech geeks. And even like IBM was like the whole world would just have the market for personal computers would be like 5 computers. Airbnb, like Y Combinator's most successful startup, yeah, we're going to rent out our living room to strangers and on an inflatable mattress. So it was more like started from things that like the founders personally themselves found really painful. Because then if you personally have experienced this problem, then you know it's a real problem, as opposed to if you're assuming somebody else has a problem, like you're not them, you don't actually like truly know. So one of the things I assume for like contact out customers are we're like, okay, they would want like AI email writing tools where it's like an AI tool that can personalize their email. We spent 6 months building this. They didn't actually want it. I thought they wanted it. I thought they could. They're like, oh yeah, that's cool. We might use it. But we're not going to pay you for it. So I think that's why it's like hard when it's a problem that you don't personally experience or you are not like personally passionate about, where it's, I will do this even if it's not a market opportunity, even if nobody cares about it. I'm just doing it because I'm literally just really interested in solving this and I think it's like meaningful. So I guess, yeah, there's some like things to consider, but like on what working with like vision impaired people, a fun exercise might be to think about, okay, what is the bigger problem behind that problem? And this may sound like ridiculous, but hey, we're brainstorming. So what if we could work on things to restore vision? What if we could research everything about like nerve regeneration and how the optic nerve works and like what technologies are there to like actually restore sight? Because that will have like way more like far reaching implements. As in, then you could just like repair people that have severed their spine because the optic nerve is part of the central nervous system. And then you can learn about all the stuff in medicine and the latest like cutting edge stuff with like biotech, which like Sam Altman has a blog post where he talks about it doesn't actually take that much to get to an edge of a new technology. He said it takes about a year because all the knowledge in the world is on a device in our pocket. Like the entire probe, human wisdom, is on like a device in your pocket. And we are like basically the first generation where that has happened. So really the only sort of excuse we have is we're lazy. So I think, yeah, that's how you can make it bigger. It's okay, we can do some like IoT thing, but no, like solve like how to fix like the human nervous system and get it to regrow, whether it's through stem cells, whether it's through whatever. And then, yeah, like just go on to Khan Academy, go through all the biology like lectures. That might take you like, I don't know, 3 months, not even 2 months. And then you'll have a 3-year undergraduate degree because you don't need to do the exams. Just watch the lectures, skim like the textbooks. Like Siren and our team put together all the biology textbooks for the Harvard and MIT biology degrees. So there's only like 10 textbooks. You can skim that like one per week, 10 weeks, you're done. And then, yeah, just go into nature.com and read all about like nerve regeneration and read about like the latest tech on like restoring vision. So yeah, that's how I think about it in terms of like, how do you make this like a world changing problem?
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, thank you so much. I think I did need a little bit of the advice, and yeah, I'll look into it because it's something that I've been delving on the past few weeks. But something that I've also thought about is in the space of non-invasive tech. So that's something that I believe has a huge potential to grow. There is a whole market that's waiting to be tapped on in that area. So I am working on that as well. I'll just try to research a bit more and get an understanding of what the market needs.
Also, a disclaimer, nothing I say is advice. There is 90% chance I'm wrong. Basically, yeah, nobody really knows what they're talking about. I think if whatever I say like resonates, awesome. If it doesn't, then I just randomly came up with it. So most of it should not resonate. Yeah, I think on IoT stuff, yeah, there's like tons of stuff there. I think Constructables, you can learn about like how to make IoT stuff. And yeah, like tons of YC companies like working on like the sort of, what is it even called? Not biotech, like the biomedical engineering.
Yeah. Right.
There's heaps of YC companies in that space. So you can just look at all of them and then reach out to those founders and be like, hey, how did you start? How did you learn the tech? What did you do? And especially like the vision companies. Yeah, this is the same thing in terms of, because it's a scientific discipline, all the research, like all the cutting edge academic research is public. Because some girl in Ukraine like just hacks all the journal sites and then just put all this online for free. So like you guys can read it and then just commercialize all of this technology, which is like really awesome. So
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Awesome. Who wants to go next? All right, Nisha.
Hello.
Okay. Sorry, let me bring up this thing again.
Audible?
Yes. Sorry, give me 1 second. Let me just try to get this screen share going. Okay. So Nisha, your one was the time tracker for students, right?
Yes. And we did some market research, like we talked to around 40 plus students, and the conclusion was that they like it's cool and they might even use it for a while, for a few days, but they won't use it for a very long time and they will surely not pay for it. So that was like the conclusion. So now we are kind of like skeptical about like what to do next.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm like the most passionate user of time tracking like in the whole world. Like I love time tracking. I think it like completely changed my life in terms of because when you're working for yourself, like when I started, I thought I was working like 40 hours a week, but when I actually started measuring like the hours I was actually working and being productive and not on Facebook or watching YouTube videos or doing something like really stupid, it was like 15 hours of the 40 hours that I sit in front of my computer. So now I've gotten it down to, okay, but maybe for 30 hours, I sit in front of my computer. I waste time for 15 hours. So I sit in front of my computer 45 hours per week. But yeah, so I actually built a time tracking tool. I spent like 1 year doing this, just cloning like Time Doctor. I built a desktop app and like an iOS app. And I learned how to code for both those platforms. And then I came to the same conclusion that you did, like people like are not like me.
Yeah.
Like people don't really want to pay for it. Not that big of a problem for most people because most people are like employees and they really care about how productive they are and how much that time they put in. Not, unless
Yeah.
that was to. So yeah, sorry, team.
I think for me also it was just a phase, like when I was like super disciplined, super nerdy, and after that I don't even think of using it myself like on a regular basis.
Right.
So I do understand.
So there is a market for this, and one of my friends, this guy Rob Rawson, runs TimeDoctor.com, which is what I use, and they're doing about 25 million revenue, and especially like when COVID hit and people started working remotely, corporations wanted, because corporations were like, okay, you're not in the office. So now they're like, okay, we want to actually track like staff productivity. And it has become like a much more common thing. So their revenue was like 3 million pre-COVID and now it's like 25 million post-COVID. Mostly for whether it's like service employees or like remote jobs, things like that. But yeah, I think maybe we could like workshop as well on what's the bigger problem like behind this problem? Like what led you to this and what are you passionate about this space and what's the sort of like bigger theme but behind this?
Yeah. I think like I myself, if I want something to be done, I have to use 10 different applications. And I don't think that should be happening. Like we as humans should have a better way to do things, like a very proper workflow. Even Rishi in a thread, Rishi and Amara were discussing how Rishi had problem with lead generation, different tools and automating them and integrating them. And that's a common problem with a lot of people. And that is something I find very cool, like an integrated version of something, probably like an AI assistant, which has access to all my devices, all my apps, and everything. And I can just tell it to do things and it can do it for myself with a decent amount of accuracy. Yeah.
So is the problem okay? So you're saying you use a lot of tools. So is really like the big problem you're trying to solve, like how do you be more productive as a human?
Yeah, sure. How to
Uh,
not to waste time between juggling between different apps.
so is it like how to make humans more productive or like how to be more productive yourself or
How to make people more productive and have a better working experience in general.
okay, interesting. And yeah, I guess what makes you passionate about this? Or because yeah, you mentioned some personal experiences jumping between like softwares and
Go for the study buddy also. When I have to study, I go to YouTube for listening to music. I go to Excel sheet to maintain like the number of hours I study every day. Then Google Calendar for making my schedule and sometimes like timers. So that's different thing. So all these things I have to do on different platforms. So I think as a student, I should have a single platform where I can do all this, or probably a way to connect all these platforms together so that I don't see 4 tabs, 5 tabs opened on my screen whenever I do something. That makes sense.
yep, yep. I guess how I think about productivity is through several like lenses. Maybe if we like break it down into what I'm working on and how hard I work. And I think the what am I working on, like how effective I am and how hard I'm working. I think the what am I working on is like probably more important than the how hard am I working. And that is like probably the biggest problem in life, right? Like, how do we live the most productive lives? But the what should I be working on is at least like how I address it right now is I just read a lot and everything I'm saying here. Like, I learn a lot, I read a lot, I study a lot of companies, I read financial reports, I read like academic journals, read books, podcasts, everything, talk to mentors, just to be like, out of all the problems that I could potentially be solving, what is the highest like impact problem? And then I would say that the software that I use like forms just a small part of the overall, like all the things that I do for productivity. So there's like reading, there's also like just daily habits, which I guess is more like a habit than the software. And I found like the things that had the most impact on me were more like just reading productivity books, whether it's like James Clear or whether it's this
Yeah.
book, like The War of Art, or this other book where it's like talking about the one thing where it's just pick your one most important thing every day to work. So not even a to-do list. It's just what is the single thing that is the highest impact thing where if you just complete that thing, you'll make every other thing like irrelevant or unnecessary. And it's almost like for me, at least I feel like it's almost like self-discipline in just building up the mental habits to do that every day and just building up like my own ability to focus. And I think software is like a part of that, but yeah, I feel like it's more like the sort of learning, the coaching and like the information and just the building of a habit that is a bigger part of that. Yeah, I don't know how what would be the best way to tackle this, but besides maybe just like reading everything about like productivity, like both looking at okay, what are all like the time tracking tools, what are all the focus tools, as in the ones where okay, let's block sites out. There's like apps that like make your phone gray. But I think probably productivity books would be a good place to start because it talks about all these tools as well. James Clear has like popular book on productivity. So does I think Get Things Done or something. It was another like productivity system where it talks about how do you string all these tools together. Yeah, I don't know if
Yeah, it is. I'm understanding. Like it's more to do with psychological than actually like about the tools.
I think it's everything. I think another part of it is like the social part of it, which is what I've been trying to learn about for Athena, because one of the things that has helped me a lot is having the CEO group that I go to every month. And every month I got to update like everyone else, which so we have like Xenos coming like next week to talk to you guys. But yeah, so my buddy Xenos like raised $40 million from Sequoia. Like the other guys in that group are like just as accomplished. So I'm gonna go there every month and I'll be like, hey guys, this is what I accomplished. And obviously I want to be like, hey, I actually did something. I wasn't like lazy and I said, hey, these are my goals for next month and actually accomplished them. So I think that like peer pressure helps a lot. But yeah, it might be good just to look at a lot of these like different ways to achieve productivity. But I think, yeah, this is also like another problem that if you like solve this and create a better structure, it would like greatly improve like everything in the world because clearly if you make everything more productive, then the world will be like more productive and
Yeah.
place.
Yes. I thought of making an AI assistant which has access to all the, if it is my virtual assistant, it has access to all the devices I use and to the internet. And it can talk just like LLMs do, like input, output in voice and text format. And then I can just ask it some questions and it can do things like fetch some relevant news from the internet as per my interest or tell me if there is any important meeting. So these little things, or probably segregating emails into important ones and not so important ones, and so on. But that's again, I think, like a very vague idea.
Definitely. I think AI is going to have a massive impact on like productivity and efficiency. And I think the reason why people are so excited about it, even though there's been 50 billion invested in the space and the companies in aggregate have only generated 1 billion, mostly that's OpenAI. Most of the money has been invested in infrastructure, not like the application
Yeah.
layer. There hasn't really been that many like or any successful applications really besides OpenAI. But the reason why people are so excited is because it's a new way of doing computing. Just as like when Apple and Microsoft started, people thought it was a joke, right? Very like a this computer thing, like if 5 people will use it around the world. But now clearly we're all using a computer. But because AI is a way where you can just describe to a computer something that you want in a vague sense and it will get it. Like when that improves and that spreads, what we can do perhaps 10 years from now is exactly as you said, Nisha. I could just have an AI assistant where I can talk to it like a human and it will like just be a humanoid robot and just do whatever I want. And instead of maybe typing to my computer, I could just ask my computer, be like, hey, I want to book some flights. I want to start a company. Why don't you go start it for me, computer? And the computer will be all right, here we go. Like, I have a business plan. I want to go raise funding for you. I'm going to code your website. So I think that's where it gets really interesting. The things I've seen in this are, there's Joseph, do you remember? Rishi, Joseph, do you remember what that thing was called that we were studying? Like Auto GTP, I think.
Yeah, auto GDP, the progress function.
Auto GTP is like a project for GTP agents. So it will like just loop GTP. It will loop chat GTP. You can YouTube this. It's like pretty funny. I think it's called like chaos GTP, but it's just, okay, I'm going to give you a goal of taking over the world. Then you can start like chat GTP subroutines. So it's, okay, taking over the world, researching like most evil tactics, trying to build nuclear bomb, trying to like social chaos through disrupting social networks with disinformation, blah, blah. And it will just show itself looping and calling chat GTP and getting the response. But yeah, like all jokes aside, like that is a really powerful system of just like creating chat GTP agents to make us more productive, which is what like OpenAI is trying to do with and humanoid robots, Tesla and stuff. Like having looked at this a little bit myself and not gone into the details yet, I feel like to really be 10x better and not just be like a wrapper around an AI, there's a need to like understand like how it works at a fundamental level and really to be in a position where you're good enough to train your own LLMs and to really understand like all the nuts and bolts of everything. And the great thing about this is that the core researchers, like for example, Andre Karpathy, who's one of the lead scientists at OpenAI or at Tesla, at OpenAI, he's got like a YouTube series on how to build like LLMs. There's a like Andreessen Horowitz course, like the A16Z Canon. Let me just show this to you guys. So there's this, A16Z. Yeah.
Well, last time you shared it, I checked it out. Pretty cool.
There's this resource. This guy was one of the core guys at like, he like basically invented the thing at Google. So yeah, the thing, neural network 0 to hero. There's a lot. There's a lot of like stuff on QR as well about like how do you go from 0 to becoming a fully qualified machine learning like engineer in 6 months. Yeah, I think there's like super exciting stuff there, but probably need to like just really go deep on the research side to have the like the 10x better edge.
Yes. And one more thing, like a thing I was thinking was to start from a very narrow field and like with a very narrow problem to a specific user group and then probably expand on it. Like some specific, like let's say I could ask them about what problems do they have, like because they have to work with multiple services. So how could we automate that and start building on that? So what do you think of that approach?
Yeah. I think like looking at the YC companies that are funded in the latest batch is a really good way to get tons of ideas because about 70% of them are AI application. So just like winter 24 YC companies, there's about 200 of them. They give like tons of ideas from, so there's ones for, I am a local business and I need an AI agent to answer my phone. And that AI agent can then set like meetings in my calendar. It can give out common responses to common like questions from my customers. There's AI sales agents. There's AI that can connect applications and write you custom apps that link up your workflows for like corporates and stuff. So yeah, there's like tons of like fun stuff. Cool. And who are we up to now? I think we just have Vishal.
Yeah. Hi, Rob. Hi, everyone.
Hey there.
Cool. Let me just bring up your business, Vishal. So, okay, so you were doing the medical like patient tracking
Yeah.
startup,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yep. That's all right. Let me just share screen and share screen. All right. Yeah. How did you arrive at working on this?
Yeah. Last time I said about the hackathon thing, right? So from that, we actually got the problem statement of seamlessly integrating the patient healthcare system with the technologies like NFC, RFID, and AI also. So this was the formation of our problem statement. From that, we actually proceeded and got to the point of making into a startup.
Yep. What would you say is the problem that you're solving?
So we are solving basically a healthcare ecosystem for like patient engagement, retention, and trust, or doctor-patient communication. Basically, we are solving a whole healthcare management or ecosystem you can call, which has hospitals, appointment, pharmacies, and labs. And one of the main resources of all the ecosystem is the human resource. In hospitals, it's the doctor. The biggest challenge we are facing is ensuring seamless integration of our advanced technologies like NFC, RFID, AI into the existing healthcare infrastructure. And
How do you know that this is a problem? Did you talk to users or
yeah, we
did you
actually
experience this yourself,
did
or
surveys of hospitals. So they also had some problems, and from that we came up with the problem definition. So basically, in India hospitals, there are no such integration of NFC or RFID technology. There are like more kind of integration of attendance systems, like in you can see in through biometrics and all. But the NFC, RFID technology integration for doctors' appointment scheduling is not yet developed in India. So from that, we got problem.
yeah, I think there's always, sorry, like we were talking about the earlier in the call,
Yeah.
there's the bigger problem behind the problem, right? Because if you select a segment of this problem of, okay, patient tracking, patients are not being tracked properly, and we say, okay, is RFID or NFI more effective than doing it manually? I don't know. I'm just thinking about Singapore. So Singapore has like one of the most efficient medical systems in the world. It's the cheapest like price relative to GDP. It's 3% of GDP, which is less than any other country. And it's one of the most like rated highest in the world. Do they use NFID? Not when I went in. So then it's okay, is NFID really like better? But I think starting with the premise of, are we solving the biggest problem out there? Is solving NFID or patient tracking is this sort of going back to these questions here? Is this something, is this like the thing that you're most passionate about in your life? Or is this like the biggest problem in your life? Or is this potentially going to be one of the biggest problems in the world? Which I would say for the problem behind that problem being like, if we solve healthcare and we keep people healthy, then yes, that is one of the biggest problems in the world, because healthcare is like, for most countries, is like 20% of 10% of GDP, or in the US case, it's 18% of GDP. So yeah, I think
I got your point. In previous call, as Sarang said about his story of grandmother. So what he described was the biggest problem was in government hospitals, the ease of getting an appointment very fast in an efficient way is one of the biggest problem facing today.
yep. So yeah, I would perhaps focus on the bigger problem of just how do you solve healthcare?
Yeah.
If you solve that, you'll make trillions of dollars. And yeah, that's one of the biggest problems in the world.
And from recent surveys we did like past 2 months, we actually found that the queue management and the discharge management, basically in hospitals, the patient have longer time in discharge. So that is one of the crucial problem we.
Yep. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, for healthcare, it's one of those like great industries where, because it is public, every like hospital has public reports on their biggest problems. You have like hundreds of countries around the world that have like healthcare sectors that publish. You have like hundreds of companies, hundreds of hospitals in hundreds of countries. So you can study like the reports, both like the initiatives that worked, the initiatives that didn't work, across like tens of thousands of hospitals. And maybe starting with the best ones, like what are the best hospitals in the world? I think what came out on the top rankings were like the hospitals in France. Singapore came up like pretty high. And then to then really go in to be like, okay, if we're even going to focus on hospitals, like what are the biggest problems that hospitals face, as described by their like financial reports? The sort of like academic sector is great to look at this as well, because doctors are like academics as well, and they frequently like publish papers. And healthcare, like most knowledge is shared. Like doctors all go to conferences where they read papers, and all these papers are public. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier, like Google Scholar, Sci-Hub to read these articles. But one way perhaps to look at this is what it really, the problem isn't healthcare. The problem is like living healthy lives. So if we didn't
Yeah.
get sick in the first place, then we wouldn't need to go to the hospital. So if there was a way to just have people like be healthier, or like increase like human health span, like the amount of time that we're healthy, that we can live a healthy life, then we don't even need to like go to the doctor. And I think a lot of the talk these days from influencers, etc., whether it's like Peter Attia or some of these other longevity guys, is that if you can just get people to live healthier lives, then you don't need you wouldn't spend nearly as much on healthcare, which is the case in countries where they have like better diet, whether it's like Japan or like the Mediterranean countries where they eat healthier diets, exercise more, then they don't have nearly as high of like medical costs. So one thing that was really interesting is this guy like Peter Attia, he has a book called Outlive, where he says that exercise is like the only scientifically proven thing that is basically like a wonder drug. Like it will, if you exercise consistently, you'll increase your lifespan by 5 years. You'll increase your health span, like the amount of time that you're healthy, by 10 years. You'll reduce your blood pressure. You'll increase your immune system. I think one of the most like interesting stats that Peter Attia shared was he said that the difference between being in the top 25% of most fit people and the bottom 25% is something like a 30% reduction in the risk of dying every year, which is the equivalent of 3 times more effective than if you're a smoker. So actually, it's 3 times worse to be in the bottom 25% of fitness than it is to smoke a packet of cigarettes every day. And he said, like, being in the bottom 25% of fitness is the equivalent of having end stage kidney failure. So being on like dialysis where your kidneys don't work is like just as bad for you as not exercising. So his prescription was just like exercise, go lift weights 2 days a week, and go do aerobic exercise 4 days a week for an hour each day. And that's it. That will solve maybe 70% of like medical problems. So yeah, I think that's how I might think about the problem with, okay, what's the bigger problem behind that problem? And then you can read everything about longevity. You can read everything about like health sciences and being healthy, from whether it's like Dave Sinclair, Peter Attia. And then you could also study, like, as we talked about, all the reports from the hospitals, all the research, like scientific review articles on problems of hospitals. Yeah. So there's like tons of things there to look at, to both decide, is the problem you're working on actually like the biggest problem for hospitals or for health in general? And then what are some angles of attack here that is like way better than other angles of attack, as validated by like research papers, so as talked about by institutions that have tried this.
Yeah, I got it. While you were saying the health part, so I really thought about it, and I actually thought that what if we tell the patients to properly have the diet plan and balanced diet, so that they cannot visit the doctor or the for the appointments once again, so they can live proper healthy life. So the percentage of that getting for appointments and doctors will be reduced. That can be done.
Yeah, definitely. Amara, you had a question?
Yeah, no, I hadn't gone yet. I was just mentioning that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll move to you. Yeah, thanks for sure.
Much.
So me and Sahana, we both are on the same startup. Like we both built media, right? And I think she covered most of it. If there's anything else I can add on, please let me know. I'll add.
Yeah, it's more like, how can I help? Yeah, like, what's your biggest challenge and how can I help?
Okay, I think I've been like this idea. I thought of it like 4 years ago, and then I've like basically learned how to build it over time and decided that this was exactly what I would do. And so it's gone through multiple iterations as we've had AI develop over the last 4 years as well. And I think one of the issues I face is how do I, as I described in the chat, how do I organize everything in the right way, right? And what is the best? Of course, there's also a lot of these, what do I say? The large companies get to afford much better tools. But as a startup, to also balance, as a bootstrap startup, to balance the exact way of what should I spend like, where do you spend money as a startup who's bootstrapped? Because I think like management tools is something that we can't really give much priority to, at least in the early stages, because a lot of expenses that can't be negotiated on, we have to spend. So what do you do in such a
Sorry, is the problem like expense management or?
So I guess so, like in some ways, because most of our like we work with a large team, and since we're in a university, we get access to a lot of people, except we don't get a lot access to a lot of money. So we can't pay those people to keep them motivated. There's no way to buy them motivated. But they all want to help, but they can't spend as much time as they're not as invested in it as we are. And so how do we ensure that it's as smooth and streamlined for them so that they don't face any resistance in trying to help us? Like that.
I guess my thought on this is, and this is like YC's advice as well, and YC is apparently the most successful startup accelerator program in the world. So like Paul Graham and Sam Altman also say this, and Mark Andreessen as well, who are A16Z and invented the web browser. They all say that the most impactful inventions in the world were invented by small teams, usually no more than 4 people, usually like 1 person. So for example, JavaScript was written by 1 person. OpenAI, I think that there's 3 like key researchers there. Atlassian, biggest company out of Australia, that was just written by 2 guys. It's the same, like 80% of Google's like search algorithm was just done by Sergey and Larry. So all the other people came as a result of scale, like after they found product market fit and they have like thousands, hundreds of thousands of users coming on where they're like, okay, now we need to make sure our infrastructure is stable. Now we have customer support. Now we need to sell like advertising, etc. That was when everybody was fired. But the initial like getting the product to be 10 times better and getting that like tsunami of demand was like a handful of people. So perhaps the reframe of this is have too many people working on it. Only have the people that are absolutely the most passionate working on it and keep it to like less than 4 until like until you're like, oh, okay, I have like hundreds of people offering me like hundreds of thousands of dollars and it's like growing uncontrollably and I really need more people to help me manage this. Don't hire.
Fair enough. I think in case of the product release, it's just with me. Like I've developed it fully and I'm not letting anyone else join on that product release because I want only people as passionate as me on it. Like, and I think all of these people that we have, they're all part of like some form of outreach. Like the best way for SEO, for example, is to develop tools that people genuinely use. And essentially that would get other companies to link to us and give us backlinks. And we have people for social media, essentially things that have a little bit of weightage, but aren't like, if those things falter, it wouldn't cause damage to the reputation of the product. So yeah, it's a very good point on the fact that we shouldn't expand unless we are capable of scaling at that point.
Yeah, I think with everything else, it like, yes, you can do like sales, you can do SEO, you can do marketing, you can do all this stuff. It is 1,000 times harder to do all that if your product is not 10 times better.
Yeah.
If you're not solving a big problem and your product isn't 10 times better, it's 1,000 times harder to do that because that's what I did. Like Contact Out is not 10 times better. So like I got really deep into SEO, which you'll see from my video. But you don't need to do that. And if you do that, you're still not going to be massive. You're just going to be like mediocre size after 8 years. But if you really want to be like, I want to revolutionize education, then I think it may be worth some time to really think about what are the biggest problems in education in
Right.
terms of like, how are people learning and what we spoke about like earlier. And how do you create a better university? Like, why bother build tools for university? Universities are just broken and should be replaced to begin with. And then, what is the 10x better solution for university? And what are all the whole other network of solutions out there and I guess for edtech, I can speak with a bit more background because I've looked at like hundreds of these tools and there are like tons of these tools that are, okay, yeah, we'll sell to university, we'll do this, that, and the other thing. Some of them are successful and there's all these like CRM systems and things like that. But I feel like that, yes, that it's just like another like SaaS play where, okay, maybe you'll make like $10 million, $20 million at max, but yeah, you can do that. And maybe you'll live like a nice life, but you can also live a nice life. And then 10 years later, you can figure out how to truly replace university and accelerate like science and human progress. So yeah, both ways could work.
That is the end goal. Like at some point, maybe also contribute in replacing universities. And I for one, can testify to how broken it is because for getting a PhD, you have to submit a thesis paper and all of that. Some of my professors have asked me to do their paper and they pay me and I do their paper for them. So I can testify to how academia is just rigged with how much money you can afford. But the point is, I do not have the credentials yet, right? To be
Don't need the credentials. I don't have the credentials either. I'm a university dropout. I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna start this Athena.vc thing. And
Yeah,
then
your company is a testament to your credentials.
That's the point.
my biggest regret is like not jumping into this straight away. So don't do that. Just go to be like, what is the biggest impact I can make and jump to it straight away. You don't have the credentials, then like study for a year and get the credentials because Sam Altman's, it will take 1 year to become an expert in this. So yeah, just become an expert in like why our university is broken. Read like the annual reports for every university, talk to like hundreds of like students, professors, everything, study like thousands of ed tech companies and new university models and just replace the whole thing. That's like what Athena is part of. But starting with that, then act small. But then know that how is this small act going to eventually replace the whole thing? Just with Athena, I'm like, okay, what am I going to start with? What's something I could do? I could get a bunch of students together like you guys, and we just get like a group of 8 people and we'll just start teaching. And then hopefully you guys will tell your friends if you get value out of this, or you can tell me why I suck and how I can improve. And then hopefully you'll get value out of this. And then you can bring more of your friends and eventually we'll start a network. And as YC has proven over the course of 20 years, YC has now generated like $600 billion in value of company. And hopefully you guys will go on and create billion-dollar companies and then you'll bring more people into this. And if we can get like 1 million entrepreneurs, which there's clearly cases of like universities that have like at that scale. Yeah, I'm like, okay, in the next 30 years of my life, we start with like a group of 8, but eventually we'll scale up to hundreds of thousands and millions of people. Just one small step to start with. But yeah, I'm like, I don't teach. I don't have any, like Joseph's a lecturer. I'm not qualified at all. But I'm like, yeah, it's a small step, right? Just get a study group together but then see, okay, then I'm learning about how I can teach better, how I can improve this. You guys can give feedback. And then eventually we have that end goal in mind. But yeah, I think for me, like I just spent like 2-3 years, like just studying, like learning and what's the best way to narrate this.
So I have a question. As someone who is building like an alternative to university, like, how can I better help you? What is the problem that you're facing? Or
How can you better help me? You can tell me how I can help you guys. So you can tell me how I can help you guys and you can give me feedback on, is the discussion structure useful? Is the curriculum useful? As well as I could tell you guys that, hey, just find like the smartest friends that you know and bring them in so you can learn from them. But I have to like structure this in a way where you get value first, that you guys would want to do that. But yeah, that's the sort of current goal. How you can help is give tons of feedback. Tell me if I suck at something or tell me what sucks. Just be very candid about it. And then, yeah, tell all your friends. And so, yeah, how you can help me is build $1 billion business. That would be what I would want for all of you guys. So, or tell me how I can help you guys build $1 billion business. Because if you can do that, then I have a bunch of friends in Silicon Valley who have a lot of money and would be happy to like give me the money so I can give you guys the money. But it all is pending on, can you guys learn the skills that is required to build $1 billion business? And one of the first things for that is just to believe that you can. And yeah, like what this Santosh guy like taught me.
thank you.
Yes, Trini. We'll take one last question and then we'll go to breakout groups because we're already quite over time.
Yeah, cool. I know. I just wanted to ask you on like your opinion on the kind of areas that would be best to work on right now. So I know you mentioned to go to Mark Anderson's website and check out the main focus groups that they're working on, but stuff that you personally feel based on your market research, stuff that could really help. So I was thinking on maybe doing an LLM based thing as well. I just wanted to see what, according to you, would be places that would be best to tap into. And
I'll give you Sam Altman's answer, not my answer, which is AI, biotech, especially I think it's anti-disease, or like the COVID mRNA vaccine, anti-aging. So AI, obviously, everyone's like talking about AI. We talked about A16Z, AI canon, biotech. We talked about that as well, like Khan Academy, like journals and stuff. So biotech, I think mostly like the DNA stuff or like the CRISPR stuff to edit your DNA and create. Like people are creating like artificial organisms, like they're creating new life forms just by editing DNA. There's the mRNA vaccines, obviously, like with COVID, they just designed a RNA vaccine that they can use that as a system to create any type of vaccine as a programmable like vaccine, which is like really awesome. There's energy. If you have like unlimited energy, then everything like is going to be free basically because you can do whatever you want. Whether that is if you can get nuclear reactors to work in a safe way and have them really small. So I don't know, you can just buy like a handheld nuclear reactor and just get free energy, or you can make fusion work and you have the energy of the sun, and then like energy is basically free. If you get AI to like actually do work, so if you can get AI as a robot to like do all our surface jobs, then no human would ever need a woman. And if you have unlimited energy, then you just have unlimited production. Better governance, US is going to fall apart. So yeah, what is a better form of democracy and what are alternate governments out there? Singapore is actually a really interesting case study. If you study all the like government papers and books for Singapore, because this is a young country, like 50-year-old country, one of like probably the highest like GDP in the world, like right now. And they just took the best practices from all these other countries and put it together. And it's like really, and there's like people that are like, can I do a startup as a country? Can I fund a new city to experiment with a new form of like democracy or whatever governance? And what would that look like? There's this guy called, I think it's like Milton Friedman, the famous economist's grandson. He started this like the Seed Bathing Institute or something, or the biology, who's like an A16Z partner. He does some of these like crypto nation state things. And then, yeah, education, as we talked about, like education and finance. If you can back people with like money and the right know-how to solve the biggest problems in the world, then that is a lever for everything that will accelerate like everything else. And then you don't know what people could create. You could have the next Bill Gates, the next Steve Jobs. There could be like so many things there. And education is like just hopelessly broken.
Yeah. Anything else that you would want to add on to this list based on personal experience?
Well, my education, and it's just like money is broken, like capitalism and money. If you think about it, like everybody's motivated by money, because money is like an API for humans. You give like money to humans, they'll do whatever you like ask them or whatever you want. So is that fair? There's, I don't know, 1% of the world controls, I don't know, like 20%. I don't know, the top 1% of the world controls like most of the resources. So is that fair? Because like really after let's say we'll set it quite high. Let's say you have $500,000 to spend every year. Beyond that, money's like kind of meaningless. You would just be being like stupid. You can't actually buy anything else that will make you happier beyond that. Yeah. So why are there people with like $100 billion, $200 billion? Is that even fair? So they're talking about in the US, hey, let's have a wealth tax. Every year, 2% of your wealth gets redistributed, or 2% of your stocks and your property gets redistributed to the poorest people in the world. If you just took like the appreciation in wealth in a 1-year period of all the billionaires in the world, and you redistributed that around the world, you can solve poverty 3 times over, like 3 times over. So yeah, there's clearly like this is broken. So money and how it organizes the world, as well as education, is like what I'm like most passionate about.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. We went a bit over time with that, but yeah, in the last 15 minutes, we can go to, how many do we have now? We don't have everyone here, so maybe we could just stay in one group. I might need a drop because my kids are calling, but yeah, you guys can feel free to discuss about like the biggest problems you're currently facing and share what you like last week for the last like 15 minutes of the call. Next week, as I mentioned, I'm going to have my buddy Zenos come on. He's very smart guy, raised 40 million from Sequoia, which is like the top venture capital firm in the world. So yeah, you guys can maybe read up a bit about Zenos's background and make a list of like good questions or intelligent questions that we can ask Zenos. Cool. All right. Thanks everyone. I'll drop off us.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Rob. Cool. So, Vishay, how would you like to do this?
Quick feedback from people finding value communicating with us, helpful, interesting, keeping you engaged. Cool. All right. So the amount of value you think from us, I assume you'll get the same amount from each of you, but I see that communities both on Discord and WhatsApp. Hopefully you guys can present some questions along the week that you come up with, share it amongst us so we have a more thoughtful conversation as compared to just coming up answers on spot. Share your learnings, share whatever you're going through. Who knows what the other person might get value from, or what new knowledge the other person might bring to me. So there's no harm sharing. It's a safe zone. Nobody is judging you. Nobody is giving you hard advice. Everybody is just sharing experiences. So yeah, I guess that in the long term, the most value we get getting this from each other rather than from us. Or I'd rather put it in a way where from each of you along with us. So no harm in expanding your communication along the way. Sorry, sounded like a disclaimer, but Joseph, you take over.
Sure. Do we want to break up or you want to stay in one room? You want to stay in one room? Yeah.
I think we can stay in one room. There's
Sure.
not too many
All
people.
right. Can do. All right. How about we do this? So we don't have a lot of time. So I think there's a lot being shared around. So I like to do this in after the end of my class, just so that people can share their learnings, what they got from the session or even the past week, that hopefully will spark someone else's ideas as well, right? And yeah, let's go there. What is one thing that you took away that was interesting, that was insightful, that changes perspective? Or yeah, what's one learning that you took away from the call today? Anyone feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself and sweet. Cool. Yeah, go Visha.
Yeah, from this cohort, I actually learned about finding the biggest problem first, then trying to get into the depths, so that if we are able to solve the biggest problem, then we can easily get into depth and then solve other problem easily.
Very good. Awesome. Thanks, Visha. Adding on that and sharing my own personal experience. So someone like me and a lot of from our team who are super talented and very smart, to attract a team of really smart people, Rob would, other than money, and that's one thing, but we can do so much with our time. Time is our most precious resource. How do you want to motivate and inspire and attract talented people, really smart people to come over? If you have a small dream, it's very hard to get those people in. But if you have a big dream, and for Rob, one of the things that he put into the JD and the chats with him is we are on a path to reach $1 billion. And this is the blueprint that we want to get there. And we have this amount of people on board with us and all that. So it's like painting a picture of the future really excites us. Like for Elon, we're going to go to Mars and colonize Mars. That is a very nice mission and vision, right? That attracts a lot of people. So even down to the janitor, the people just cleaning the toilets and everything as part of SpaceX, they feel very compelled and invested to coming to work every single day because they know they are serving for a bigger cause. And that's why having the bigger mission is so attractive, not only for yourself, but also for the people that you work with and investors that's going to come on board as well. Great stuff, for sure. All right. Anyone else who would like to go next?
I think I can add on to Joseph's point. So I interviewed for Contact Out 2 years ago, and that's the first time I spoke to Rob. And in our first meeting, we discussed what we're discussing about Athena right now. So how we think about education and challenges. Somehow, surprisingly, our thoughts were so much in sync. That bigger vision attracted me to get on board with the job. So that's exactly, I think, what Joseph's trying to mention here, where if you have a bigger vision and that resonates with you, it will just makes it easier to convince more people to join and work on it.
And just to break down further, so one of the things that we do is similar as what we asked you guys in that questionnaire, is trying to figure out what's the value, right? What is your value? And if you have similar values, which actually all of our values comes down from our why, like our non-negotiables, things that we really believe in. So for Rob, one of his own personal values is learning or rapid learning, right? And as you can see from the books that he reads, the essays he reads, his podcasts, things that he's very excited about this, right? Passionate about this. And that's what attracts similar type of people, right? Where money, status, and all that doesn't really matter, but it's that people of a similar value. So having that bigger vision is important, and that's why he is like that. But it all really comes down from his value as well, his why. So I think back then, coming back to you guys, is that's figuring out what is that why? And that's why it's coming down to the passion. And what is that passion? And how you want to define it? For me, how I defined it is, which I do with my clients as well, is like, what is something that you enjoy doing, even if you're willing to do it for free? If you're not going to get paid to do that. If you tell Rob, hey, you're not going to get paid for this, I think you still do it. Right? For me, it's design and teaching. I love designing, I love teaching, and that's my why. Right? So what is yours? You're gonna think about it. And usually the answer from that comes back. Yeah, you guys are easier to come. For me, I think I've been tracked back quite 20 years plus back. But it's around you when you're a teenager, somewhere around 12 to 16, 18 years old. During that period of time, there's something that you enjoy doing or something that happened to you during that period of time that really profoundly changed your vision of the world, your view of the world, your perspective of the world. What was that? And then you want to figure out, and then you want to double down it. So what it means is there's a lot of reflection to go and figure that out, right? Because if you're trying to go and chase for a trend, AI, VR, all this, you're just chasing. You're not searching. You're not going towards your own thing. So do that reflection. That's my additional thought. Which will then you'll figure out what's the value. Okay. So anyone else would like to share something that you've learned from today? Or from the last pick? Feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand in the chat. Everyone has one time. No, I will pick people already. Same like I'll do in classroom. All right, Amara. Yeah, I have you on the top right of my screen next to Rishi. So
It's because my name starts there, right?
yeah, your parents.
No, I don't think that's because of that. Because the next person after Amara is Vishal on my screen.
No idea. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, what am I supposed to say? Sorry, I
No,
was
what's something that you learned or you took away from today's call?
okay. I actually have notes on that. There are things I think whenever I see Rob speak, it just or anyone in general, my brain just goes, "Oh wait, I had a similar problem," or "Oh wait, that's how I think." And
Yeah.
why could he be thinking that? One of the things I didn't think of until today was to go through YC's directory. Right? I've been following YC, started school and all of those things, but I didn't think of that. So time to hit the. And then I hadn't heard of Minerva. That was again new thing.
Yeah.
And then there were I think, yeah, also I figured that like we already at Zivia, we have the authority that we're much better than every application in every metric. Like any metric you pick, we outperform them. But I figured we could just strengthen that claim by using science papers. Like with how much academia has been polluted by papers, we could just find some papers confirming whatever you want to believe. So I can find a whole bunch of papers like that. And again, like that's it. I think like and interviewing people, but these are the main takeaways I had.
Yeah, awesome. Very good takeaways. And I think that also speaks truly to me, right? So thinking big, you really need to surround yourself with people who can think like that. So if I work in a big corporate, other than the CEOs and all that, they think in a structured way and sound big. But if you're not hanging around people that thinks big, right, and sees a different picture of the future, your worldview you'll be like a frog stuck in a well. So like that's why I think that it's so important to hang out with a group of people. And as the saying goes, you're the average of 5 people that you're around with. So hopefully in this, we are more than 5. So hopefully with just Rob and if you hang out more with people like Rob and other mentors or other business founders who have done it and created multi-million-dollar business, your world will start to change. And one thing is that your beliefs start to change as well. That you believe that is possible. And so important. When we are stuck in a university environment, it's hard because everything is in the 4 walls and what the teachers say, what is right, which is not. It's not really true. So awesome. Thanks, Amara. All right. Anyone else? All right. Tarini, you want to go?
Sure. Yeah, I think I had a very nice session today. I learned quite, like you said, looking at the bigger picture, which is something that's, of course, it's like a staple of building something huge. But at the same time, I think it came to a lot more of a actual perspective when Job was speaking about. He literally went to how you could literally remove visual impairments in the first place. So I think that made me also change my perspective quite a bit. I have always been a very much that kind of person since my childhood. But I do think, like you mentioned, depending on the kind of surrounding you're in, you do tend to change your. So I think a lot of the college environment did make me focus on a few things that I don't know. It was a little not as much of a bigger picture, or rather smaller. But yeah, I think this kind of having interactions with people like Rob, like you, and everybody in this cohort really broadens the perspective and forces you to think in the way that could be truly beneficial.
Awesome. Great to hear that. Thanks, Tarini. So true. All right. Who is next? Mark. Mark, are you still there? If your audio is back on, if you unmute yourself. No. All right. Cool. Nisha, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Beautiful.
So one thing I learned was to work on hard problems, because over time, hard problems, like while solving them, we have better ROI and better impact than working on easy problems. And another one he said was to read more and more about the market and about the competitors and everything that's related to the business. So that I think I really got to work on. And yeah, another was he shared about Time Doctor, so I'll research it thoroughly. So yeah, these are like the three main key takeaways I have.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks. I think to add on similar to if Trini as well, right? Is yes, start with the biggest problem and the big thing. But I think later from that is going with first principles. One of the entrepreneurs and the role models that Rob looks up to is Elon Musk for obvious reason. So they're kind of like similar in the way of thinking and everything. But one of the things is first principles. If you break down the problem that you're trying to solve is education, cool. What about education I want to fix? All right, what is it about this? How does it make up? Similar, a big thing like productivity. Cool. What is it about productivity? You break down that term into something like, you can start with a big general thing, but because you're going to excite a lot of people and everything, but break it down and then see who are in the space that's really trying to solve it. Like you got the James Clears, you got the Ali Abdals, you got all the productivity apps. Great. What is the gap from there? What can I learn from each other that they're not already doing? So from that, your research will start to guide you. And more importantly, actually, beyond just the research, is the customers or the people that you're targeting to, it will guide you. Your customer will guide you in terms of making the next decision. Cool. Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Nisha. All right. Sahan? See that?
Yeah, it's about 7. But the one thing I learned here was the necessity of doing research outside your target audience. Amar was talking about this earlier in the week with me, called the blue ocean, right? You don't sell things to your intended audience. You try to make everyone really get in with your product. And hearing how the market research worked for industries that was outside of us felt a lot more refreshing because we're always saying about the same thing. So it felt really nice to hear the other side. Imagine that there is a world outside of it and what they are doing and how it can all really collaborate with each other.
Awesome. That's a great one. Yeah, one of the exercises that I kind of brainstorming exercises that I do with my students, my teaching students, is we call it the lightning demos, right? Basically, we want to look at what is an industry outside of the industry that I'm focusing on that has already solved this problem that is done in a different way, right? So one simple way is if I'm trying to build a subscription business for student accommodation, let's say, trying to improve that, I can most directly just go and look at student accommodation apps, solutions, and all that. But what are the other companies that are doing subscription that can get inspired from? Okay, the next one maybe is hotel bookings, right? Hotel.com, booking.com. How about the travel industry, Skyscanners, your TripAdvisors? How are they doing that? That I can learn, be it from the UI, be it from the messaging, be it from their UX flow, or even all the way down to delivery app, the ones that's based in your home country, that I can learn from. How are they doing the payment processing? How are they doing the order or the selection of orders, the browsing of things that I can get inspired from? So thinking around that way really helps you to broaden the ideas. And what is backed then by psychology is that people, your customers, your users are already using these apps. So they are familiar with these flows. If you're trying to go and invent a whole new different thing, you're just disrupting the user experience. So rather, just go ahead, see all these top apps that is really all applications or softwares, tools that people are already using because they're already familiar with it. You adapt something similar. And that's one of the benefits of copying or stealing from your competitors, which actually is just really helping your users because they are already familiar with that. Don't do something that's new. Awesome. Thank you. And did I miss anybody? Did Vishal, did he go? I don't remember. Wish I went. Yeah,
Yeah, I
you went
don't
first,
know.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I was the first.
Yeah, I'm clearly getting old. All right, cool. Anyone else, anything else to add? All right. Rishi, anything for next session? Do we need to remember?
Yes, I'll be sharing details about Xenos, the invite, etc. on Discord. Please go watch who he is, what he does, what he's done in his career. There are some valid questions, interesting enough for all of us to educate each other. And hopefully, please post your questions beforehand so Xenos can think about it and answer instead of just being put on spot.
Yep.
And apart from that, I wanted to take a poll on, is it okay if I share your form responses as samples to other applicants. I'll run a poll on Discord, mark it as a yes or no. If you guys are okay, I'll share yours. If not, it's cool. Because we're currently sharing Joseph, mine, and Rahul, and the colleague of ours, our form responses, and they clearly aren't resonating. So what I want to try out is maybe share yours and give it out as a sample, saying these are the people we've accepted into our cohorts. These are the responses we're getting, and we like. Or if that's okay with you guys, I'll just run a quick poll on Discord. Mark your votes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, Rishi, when you get the new cohort, any chance that we could like also get to speak with them sometime, like any cross cohort thing?
Yeah, definitely. There are a couple of different plan of actions that we have in mind. Firstly, we try to build a bigger community out of individual cohorts, right? So apart from your cohort, there will be a channel to be able to talk to other people as well from different cohorts. That will be your larger community. So the general channel, we're not going to make that into a private cohort channel that's going to be accessible by everyone across cohorts. That's one. Second things, your cohorts might be subjected to change in people depending on how many people continue throughout the program, right? Some people might drop off midway, not finding value, might not be able to give it the amount of time we asked for them, etc. So as and when people drop in, we might reshuffle you into different cohorts, thus introducing you to new founders. The third thing we're trying to also do is we want to move to a stage where we can host in-person meetups. So for that to happen, we would need more people in your vicinity, in your city, or you being able to travel for these events, right? So in either of those cases, the next step is just to get more people onboarded and we'll take it from there.
Because one of the biggest amount of value we found in the first thing itself, apart from all of the learning, is that we got to meet everyone else, hear their story. Like rather than just learning from our mistakes or our struggles, we also got to learn. I think we've so far had a meet with both Trini and Nisha, me and Dana have done, and we've learned how they approach things.
That's great. If you need any other help in terms of communicating with each other, let us know. But I think it's pretty accessible over Discord and WhatsApp. So, three tiny things from me. Anything else? Just response item.
Cool. I'll just give you a prompt that for questions to us, no pressure. I would say the best type of question you can ask mentors of people, Rob, or anyone that you meet, is really asking about their personal experience. And ideally trying to find one that is similar to the kind of problem that you're solving. But the thing that Rob always tells us, and it makes a lot of sense, is if you share the problem that you're facing in your company with him and get a response and answer, you're already going to get, he doesn't have full context about your business. So the best way to do it is really asking people about how did he find the first customer? How did he find the first 100 customer? How did he get the pitch? How did he get funding, this first funding? Stuff like that. How did he sell? Like those would be much clearer and easier for him to share as well. Yeah. But don't put too much pressure on it. Yeah. Cool. Anyone has any other things? If not, we'll call it close for today. All good. Sweet. Beautiful. All right. Everyone have a great rest of the week. Thanks again for updating your weekly goals in the channel. It's really helpful and it's lovely write-ups. Yep. On to another productive week. All right. Have a good one, everyone.
See you guys.
See you guys.
You guys.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye bye.